Hello, everybody. My name is Joe Rex, and I'm rating country artists to create an all-time ranking list. I hope it will be comprehensive. I'm trying to make it as objective as possible and keep my opinions out of it. I will be using 5 criteria. These are voice and instrumentation, consistency, style/image, song repertoire as a writer and a singer, and number 5, the last one, impact. They'll be rated on a scale of 10, so it'll add up to 50 in the end. Blah, blah, blah. Let's get started. By the way, if you're watching this on TikTok, go follow my YouTube, where hopefully I post this as well. It's Joe Rex Music, and it'll flash somewhere in here. If you're watching this on YouTube, go check out my TikTok at JoeRex_hillbilly for a lot of music related stuff, including me getting a little deeper into my thoughts. So number 1, the first guy we will be looking at is the king of country music himself, Mr. George Strait. So again, we're going to be looking at 5 criteria. The first one is voice and instrumentation. So for George Strait, I put a 9.5 out of 10. And he has one of the most iconic voices in the genre. He has one of the smoothest, cleanest voices in the genre. But I take the little half point off because he doesn't play his guitar on stage, and it ticks me off. And he's never shown prowess as a guitar player or a musician, really, of any kind. So there's the little half point deduction. Next, for consistency, it's obviously a 10 out of 10. Now, I know somebody mentioned to me when I put this ranking on TikTok that there definitely was a shift in his music before the movie Pure Country and after the movie Pure Country. By the way, if you don't know, George Strait was in a movie called Pure Country, and he has a ponytail, so you need to go check that out. But the music is country on both sides of it. One is just a little more Texas swing, honky-tonk style stuff, and the other's a little more, I guess, Nashville. But he's country on both sides of it, obviously, 10 out of 10. And number 3 is style and image. I gave George Strait a 9 out of 10 on this, and he may not have the most iconic look ever, but it's pretty iconic. It's the Wrangler jeans, the Justin boots, the cowboy hat, the button-up long sleeve shirts. I'm sure those are probably Wrangler as well. It's kind of the rodeo look, and it's definitely his. I mean, Garth kind of had something like it, and there's been other, a lot of country singers dress like that, but it's George's look. We move to his song repertoire. Not the most prolific writer in the world, but of all the stuff he's sang, I mean, he has over 60 number 1 hits. It's a 10 out of 10. I mean, come on. If you want some suggestions, if you don't know much about George Strait, Amarillo by Morning, You Look So Good in Love, She'll Leave You With a Smile, Write This Down, The Chair, Full Hearted Memory, Unwound, Murder on Music Row, Need I Go, He might be the one guy that could fill a stadium of 10,000 people, and every single person there knows every one of his songs. Because I can go to a lot of artist concerts, and there might be 1 or 2 songs that I'm like, I've never heard that one before. But everybody knows, maybe up until the last 10 years or so, everybody knows everything he's put out. Lastly, we have impact on the genre. Now, I put this as a 9 out of 10 at first, but now it's a 10 out of 10, and let me explain why. I had kind of misunderstood my history. I knew George Strait was definitely the face of neo-traditional country music. Country music is divided into eras. You have the outlaw movement with Willie and Waylon. You have the neo-traditional movement, which I'm talking about here with George Strait, Alan Jackson, Randy Travis, all of those guys. You have the Nashville sound back in the day with Farron Young and Jim Reeves. But I knew that George was the face of it, but I didn't know he was also kind of the guy that started it, because he came along before Alan Jackson, he came along before Randy Travis. So his impact, he started an era of country music. Now, as far as George's, he's a pretty quiet guy, he's not pulling stunts or anything. That's kind of his image, going back to that too, is just kind of a nice guy. He doesn't get involved in scandals or anything, and he doesn't mess around when he's on stage. So to be able to have such an impact, which might be a good message for young artists, to be able to have such an impact without doing any of the weird stuff is really something. So 10 out of 10. And that brings George's final rating to a 48.5 out of 50. Obviously, he's the only one we've covered right now, so he's number one on the spot for now. Moving on to our second artist we'll cover here today, we have Rockin' Randall, Bocephus, Hank Williams Jr. is who I'm talking about. He's got a million other nicknames as well. Now, I'll be honest with you right up front. I'm not a huge fan of Hank Jr., but again, I'm trying to be as objective as possible, so let's see what we get. I know he has a really passionate fan base, and I know he has a really passionate fan base on social media. You know, guys, tear me up. I don't know. I'm trying to be non-biased. So, number one, we have voice and instrumentation. We have an 8.5 out of 10 for this one. I don't like his voice. I don't think he has a very good voice, but it's passable. It's enough. And he also has base level competency at most instruments. He shows it a lot in his live shows. So all of that combined is an 8.5 in my opinion. Then we move on to consistency. I have that as a 9.5 out of 10. Now again, he experienced one of the biggest transformations probably an artist has ever gone through. Definitely a country artist, maybe except Willie Nelson. But when he was singing his dad's stuff and when he was singing his own stuff, it was still all country. The half-point deduction I'm taking away is he's kind of ventured into blues a little bit. He's ventured into rock. So he hasn't just stayed country all the time. It's not because of his big shift he went through. Then we have style and image. It's a 10 out of 10. I mean, this is something he knocks right out of the park. The beard, the glasses, just the outlaw persona. The way he showed up to shows drunk, he's done all of it. So he's definitely got the outlaw persona down and still lives it today. So again, his image is just so bizarre because of what he looked like before. Him and Willie Nelson, before they went outlaw, they were pretty clean cut. They were wearing the nudie suits, but not anymore. So he's definitely got the style and image. He's got that down. 10 out of 10. Then we have his song repertoire. I'm giving that a 10 out of 10 just on his own music. Family Tradition, If Heaven Ain't a Lot Like Dixie, Whiskey Bent and Hellbound, Country Boy Can't Survive. I mean, you can go on and on and on and on. He's got that down. 10 out of 10. Finally, we have his impact on the genre, and I gave him a 9 out of 10. It's weird. Clearly, he's having a massive impact because of the amount of comments I get whenever I type or say anything about him. But I've always kind of considered within the outlaw movement, you have Waylon and Willie up top, and then you probably have, and Johnny Cash, and then you probably have Chris Christopherson, Hank, and David Allan Coe. Not quite, because Hank was kind of on the second wave of that outlaw movement. He didn't really start it. That being said, he still had a massive impact on it. So I think 9 out of 10 is perfectly fair. So that brings us to Hank's total ranking here. He gets a 47 out of 50. Again, Hank Jr. fans, bash me all you want. That's a dang good ranking. He's not going to be on anybody's top 5 list if they really go objectively. So that would put him at 2 behind George Strait right now. And finally, sticking with our 80s and 90s theme, the last guy I'll cover here today is Alan Jackson. And, we've kind of got an 80s, 90s vibe going on today. So we'll start with his voice and instrumentation, which is a 9 out of 10. He has the same problem as George Strait where he doesn't play guitar when he sings. He has a guitar dangling on him, but he doesn't play it. So he's never really shown much prowess as a musician. But his voice is really good. Not quite as good or iconic as George Strait, so that's why it's a 9 out of 10. Then we move on to consistency. He's obviously a 10 out of 10 on this as well. We looked at Hank and George Strait, and they've kind of had shifts even within their own career. Even if they were country on both sides of that shift, they had a different sound. Alan really has never changed his sound that much, and if you know, he's kind of become the gatekeeper of traditional country music. So he's always stayed very consistent. So 10 out of 10. If I could go higher, I would. Then we move on to his style slash image. He kind of wears nowadays it's kind of the button ups with the jeans and the boots. But I put him in a 9 out of 10. Maybe a little higher than he deserves, but it's just because he's this big 6'5" goofy guy. If you've ever watched him give like an award acceptance speech or anything, he's not a good speaker. He's very awkward. But in the 90s, when he was rolling, that dude was cool. I'm thinking of that Chattahoochee video with the life jacket or the Cowboys jersey or something. He could pull looks like that off, and his image too is kind of this. Think of all the award show stunts he's pulled, and just like how he's not putting up with any crap from anybody. It's just cool. I don't know how else to say it. So his style slash image is a 9 out of 10. Then his song repertoire. As far as him as a singer, it's not quite as deep as Hank or George Strait's song repertoires, but he's written a lot of music. He's probably one of the better writers there is. Everything he has his own flavor to it. You definitely know it's an Alan Jackson written song. I mean, think about Better Class of Losers, which he wrote with Randy Travis. And he writes a lot of his own stuff. So I'm putting him as 10 out of 10 on this. Even if his repertoire is not quite as deep as other people's, he's got the singer and the writer side working for him. Don't Rock the Jukebox, Midnight in Montgomery, Little Bitty, Living on Love, Chattahoochee. Look him up. His impact, I have him at a 9.5 out of 10. He kind of sits to me with the neo-traditional movement, kind of where Hank Jr. sits with the outlaw movement, which is kind of the second tier. He's just not George Strait, and nobody is. So that's not a smack against him or anything. But he's kind of the second fiddle to it. But as far as being vocal about traditional country music and being kind of a vocal guy about being kind of a leader in that category, he's definitely more vocal than George Strait. I mean, we can go through the award show things he's done where they weren't going to give enough time to George Jones at the CMAs. It was either the CMAs or the AMCs or ACM, sorry. And so he stopped his song in the middle to play Choices by George Jones. He didn't want to lip sync one year, so he sent his drummer out there without sticks, and he's walked out of an award show before. So he's kind of been that gatekeeper, which is why I was kind of upset to see him at the CMAs getting the Lifetime Achievement or some kind of award like that. And he's up there with John Party, which I like John Party, and Lainey Wilson, and I still can't remember the name. Dierks Bentley, is that the other guy? I like them all fine, but that's not Alan's crowd, That's not what he fought for, really. So, either way, impact is 9.5 out of 10. So that puts Alan's final rating to a 47.5 out of 50. So if we look here, we've got George Strait at number 1 with a 48.5 out of 50, Alan Jackson at number 2 with a 47.5, and Hank Jr. number 3 with a 47. Alan's rating surprised me. It seemed a bit high to me, but again, I looked at it objectively, and it was just higher than I thought. He's done more than even I thought, and I really like Alan Jackson. So that's going to wrap it up here. Again, if you're on YouTube, go check out my YouTube and TikTok, please. I'd appreciate it. And let me know if you want to see more of these. And I really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy thinking about country music. But I hope you enjoyed it. And everybody stay warm. And hopefully I'll have more of these in the future.